She thought I was in Denver. That's what I told her. A late-night emergency meeting with a client who needed handholding through a merger. She even packed my suitcase for me, pecked my cheek like a loving wife should, and told me not to forget my scarf. The one she gave me for Christmas. I left the house at 4 a.m., just as planned. And then I doubled back. Not to catch her. Not at first. I didn't expect to see what I saw. I just couldn't leave. Something didn't sit right. The way she hugged me goodbye but didn't linger. The way her eyes didn't meet mine when she said, "I love you." She used to say it like a promise. Lately, it felt like punctuation. I parked 2 blocks away, waited until the sun rose, and walked the neighborhood like a stranger in my own life. My heart didn't want to believe it, but my gut had already filed the divorce papers. I just didn't have proof yet. I needed truth, not suspicion. Around 6:45 that evening, I saw her. A glimpse through the glass of Cafe Veranda. That little Italian place she said she hated, too loud, too cliché. She sat near the window in the booth we'd once shared on our first anniversary. I remember how her eyes shimmered in the candlelight that night, her hand wrapped around mine, promising forever. Now her hands were wrapped around a wine glass. And she wasn't alone. He was younger. Maybe by 10 years, maybe more. That kind of arrogance that wears a sport coat with no tie, hair just messy enough to be intentional. He leaned in as he talked, fingers brushing hers on the table like it was a game. She giggled. Not the polite kind she gave me when I made dad jokes. The kind that meant something. The kind I hadn't heard in a long time. I walked past once. Then again. The second time, I didn't move. I stepped inside. The hostess smiled. "Just one." I nodded. "Corner table, please." I sat 10 feet from them. Close enough to hear her laugh. Close enough to count the lies. She didn't see me. Not yet. She was too caught up in whatever fantasy she'd built for herself. He asked about her work. She said she owned her own interior design business. Funny, I was the one who built her website, registered the LLC, handled all the invoices she never opened. She called me the brains when it suited her. Now she was the empire, and I was nowhere in the story. I watched her tilt her head in that flirty way she used to reserve for me. Watched him reach across the table, brushing something from her cheek. It didn't look like a first date. There was too much familiarity in the way she refilled his wine, too much ease in the way he ordered for her without asking. This was rehearsed. This was comfortable. This was happening. My heart didn't race. It slowed, as if the body already knew what the mind refused to accept. I should have left. I should have stood up and walked out and spared myself the rest. But curiosity is cruel, especially when it's laced with heartbreak. She said something that made him laugh. Big, loud, open-mouthed laughter that drew a few stares. She blushed, and then she leaned in and whispered something that made him stop laughing altogether. He looked at her with that gaze, the one I thought only I knew how to interpret. Like the world disappeared and there was only her. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small box. Not a ring. Not yet. But it glinted. My stomach twisted. I called the waiter over. "Can I get their check?" I pointed discreetly. He frowned. "You know them?" I smiled. "Oh yeah, intimately." He returned with the bill, tucked in a black leather folder. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a card, but then paused. Something else instead. I slipped off my wedding ring, worn down at the edges, comfort fit, engraved with her initials inside. I placed it gently inside the bill folder and waved the waiter over. "Leave this with them," I said, quietly. He nodded, confused, but professional enough not to ask. I stood up slowly. My knees felt heavier than they should. Maybe it was the weight of realization. Maybe it was the absurdity of how calm I felt. I walked out without looking back. She didn't see me leave, but she saw the ring. I was halfway down the block when I heard the clatter. Glass breaking. A chair scraping. Her voice, sharp, panicked, not like the laughter from before. I didn't turn around, because I didn't need to. She thought I was out of town. She thought she could rewrite the story without the man who helped build it. But she forgot one thing. I don't leave without saying goodbye, even if I say it with silence, even if I say it with a ring. I didn't go home that night. I drove for hours, aimless, watching streetlights blur past like the timeline of our marriage. Every stoplight, every intersection felt like a metaphor. Places to turn, places to wait, and sometimes just places to break. I ended up in a motel 2 towns over. Not because I needed the distance, but because I couldn't stomach the idea of sleeping in the same bed where she'd kissed me goodbye that morning. It wasn't rage I felt. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was something quieter, heavier. Like mourning a person who wasn't dead, just no longer the version you believed in. She called. Once. I stared at the screen as it buzzed on the bedside table. Her name, still saved with a heart. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I turned the phone off. The next morning, I went home anyway. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see the aftermath. Needed to know if any of what we had still lived in her eyes. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I opened the front door like a burglar. My keys felt foreign in my hand. Everything looked the same. The throw pillows she insisted on, the framed picture from our trip to Oregon, the scent of lavender she loved so much. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair pulled back, wearing the old college sweatshirt I thought she'd thrown away. The ring I'd left at the restaurant was on the counter, next to a mug of untouched coffee. She turned when she heard me. No makeup, eyes swollen, voice barely above a whisper. You were there. I nodded. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like the words were caught between guilt and disbelief. Finally, she said, why didn't you say something? I stared at her for a moment. Then I said the most honest thing I could. Because there was nothing left to say. She stepped forward. It wasn't what it looked like. I almost laughed. Almost. Then help me out. What was it? Her lips trembled. He's a friend. We talk. We've had dinner before. And you didn't tell me. I cut in calm. You wore the necklace I gave you, sat in our booth, and lied about where you were. That's not just dinner. That's rewriting history. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, breathing unevenly, like the oxygen in the room had changed, and she couldn't keep up. He means nothing, she said finally. It's you. It's always been you. I shook my head, tired. You don't get to say that after hiding him from me. I didn't hide him, she insisted. I just didn't tell you. A pause. Then we both laughed, but not the kind of laugh we used to share. This one was bitter, embarrassed, cracked down the middle. I walked past her and sat on the edge of the couch. Do you remember our wedding vows? She nodded slowly. I said I'd be your home. I whispered. And you promised not to lock the doors on me. She said nothing. Just stood there, hands at her sides, like a child waiting for punishment. But I wasn't angry. Not the kind she expected. I was disappointed. Not in her, not really, but in the version of me that trusted without boundaries. That loved without looking. She sat across from me. I messed up. Yeah, I said. You did. I didn't sleep with him, she said, quickly, desperately. I looked her in the eyes. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you acted like I wouldn't notice. Like I wasn't worth the truth. We sat there in silence, the space between us filled with ghosts. Memories. Echoes of better days. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. Not yet. I want to fix this, she said. I sighed. You can't fix something if you don't understand why it broke. Tears slid down her face, and this time, I believe they were real. Not because she got caught, but because she realized the cost. I didn't tell her whether I'd stay or go. Not that day. Sometimes the worst punishment isn't abandonment. It's making someone sit in the ruins and feel it. That night, I slept in the guest room. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't see her laughing at that dinner table. I saw my ring, sitting on the check, waiting to be noticed. Waiting to say everything I couldn't. It sat there for 3 days. The ring. She kept it on the counter at first, beside the sink, just left of the fruit bowl. Then it migrated to the windowsill above the stove. Then the nightstand. Like she didn't know what to do with it, but couldn't bear to put it away. On the 4th morning, it was gone. I didn't ask. We'd been living like distant relatives. Talking in polite fragments. Passing each other in the hall. No shouting. No sobbing. Just the dull thud of something beautiful gone soft. She cooked dinner one night. I didn't need it. She started leaving the porch light on. I started coming home later. We moved like two people sharing the same dream, but waking at different times. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. Not entirely. She hadn't slept with him. That much, I believed. But in a way, it almost would have been easier if she had. At least then I could point to a boundary crossed. A line in the sand. But emotional betrayal? That's slipperier. Harder to define. Harder to forgive. Because she gave the best parts of herself, her secrets, her laughter, her time, to someone else. Not out of spite, not even lust. Out of absence. Mine. Somewhere between the long work trips and the late-night spreadsheets, I'd stopped seeing her, noticing her. I gave her safety, stability, a roof, and rhythm, but maybe not presents. Not the kind that matters. And she went looking. That doesn't make it okay, but it makes it human. On the 5th day, she knocked on the door to the guest room. Didn't open it. Just knocked. I made coffee, she said softly. You're kind. Black with a splash of oat. I didn't respond. But 10 minutes later, it was waiting on the kitchen table. Still hot. Next to it, a small box. My ring. Inside was a note. Handwritten. 2 pages. No makeup. No perfume sprayed on the paper. Just ink, smudged slightly where her hand had trembled. I won't quote all of it. Some things don't belong to anyone but the person who lived them. But she said this. You didn't just leave the ring on the check. You left me a mirror. I looked into it, and I hated who I saw. Not because you caught me, but because you saw me clearer than I saw myself. That night, I stood in the living room, holding the ring between my thumb and forefinger, watching it spin on the table. She came in quietly, sat across from me. I've been wearing mine, she said. I looked up. Her eyes were tired. Not sad, not anymore. Just real. I didn't expect you to forgive me, she added. But I hoped. Maybe you'd remember who we were before all this. I nodded. I do. Do you miss him? The man I was with you? No, I said. The man who believed this could never happen. She didn't answer, just lowered her eyes. And then I asked the question I'd been dreading most. Why him? Her voice cracked. Because he looked at me like I used to look at myself. Before I got small. Before I became just your wife. That hurt, but I needed to hear it. We sat in the quiet a long time. Then I slid the ring across the table toward her. She looked confused. I'm not putting it back on, I said. Not yet. She swallowed hard. I understand. But I'm not throwing it away either. That was 5 months ago. We started therapy. Individually at first. Then together. There were tears. Fights. Long walks that ended in silence. But also slow moments of reconnection. Brushing fingers as we passed in the hallway. Watching old movies we used to love. Sharing stories we never told when we were pretending everything was fine. Trust doesn't rebuild like a bridge. It regrows like skin. Raw, pink, and fragile at first. But stronger if it's protected. Some days, I still see the two of them in that booth when I close my eyes. Her laugh. His fingers on hers. But most days, I see her here. Now. Trying. Showing up. Not perfect, but honest. The ring's still in that little box on the bookshelf. We both know it's there. Waiting. Not as a symbol of what we were, but maybe of who we're becoming. She thought I was out of town. So I watched her dinner date from the next table. She laughed until she saw my ring on the bill. And somehow, that was the beginning. Not of the end, but of the truth.